All right, boys and girls, it's time for some more chapters of Wishtree. Yesterday, we got to see Samar and Steven actually talk to each other, which is amazing. And Red talked too, which is crazy, and it's against tree rules, I think. But Red is telling the story about Maeve, the girl who reminded him of Samar. And yesterday we met Maeve in the story, and she is an immigrant from Ireland, which means that she came to America from Ireland, and she lost her brother on the way, and she just had kind of a tough life. And so Red is telling the story of how she came to the neighborhood where Red is, and how she was so kind to everyone, and everyone would bring her their sick animals, and she would also help the people too. So I'm going to read some more chapters. Here we go. The years passed, and Maeve became as connected to the neighborhood as I was, even as newcomers from other lands added their music and food and language to our little part of the world. No matter where people were from, Maeve cared for them as best she could. I grew tougher, my older limbs less pliable, my shadow longer. More trees and shrubs joined me, but there was plenty of sun for all of us, and we never wanted for water. I'd hosted many families by then, mice and chipmunks in particular. My closest confidant was a young gray squirrel named Squibbles. All squirrels' names begin with the letters SQU. Squibbles was especially fond of Maeve, who often fed the little squirrel table scraps. Here's Squibbles. Privately, Squibbles and I worried about Maeve. Along the way, Maeve had seen a suitor or two, but nothing much came of those flirtations. She had friends aplenty and work to do from dawn till dusk. Still, she seemed lonely. Sometimes Maeve would sit on the porch steps, watching happy families stroll past, and her eyes would well up with tears. At night, she'd gaze out an open upstairs window, and her sighs would float to us on the breeze, melancholy as the call of a morning dove. Often Maeve would sit at the base of my trunk and write in her journal. Now and then she'd read passages aloud. She spoke about the Irish countryside fading into fog. She spoke about her family she'd lost. She spoke about her secret hopes and fears and longings. She had love to give and no one to give it to. Maeve adored early mornings when the world was bathed in mist and the sun was still a promise. She would lean against my trunk and close her eyes and hum a tune from her childhood. One day, the first day of May, Maeve joined me at dawn. To my surprise, she reached up to my lowest bough and gently tied a scrap of blue striped fabric in a careful knot. I wish, she whispered, for someone to love with all my heart. That was my first wish, and the beginning of many more. As the weeks passed, the piece of fabric on my branch drew many comments. Some of the folks in our neighborhood, the ones from Ireland, would nod knowingly and smile. To them, Maeve would simply say in her lilting voice, "That's my raggy tree. She's not a hawthorn, but she'll do just fine." People who'd come here from other lands, and there were many of them, would frown at the rag or even reach up to remove it. Maeve would warn, "Don't you be touching my wish now." Patiently again and again, she would explain how in her old home, leaving wishes on a raggy tree was a time-honored tradition. Now and then, people would ask Maeve what she'd wished for. She'd tell them the truth with a sigh and a wry smile. "Nothing much. Just someone to love with all my heart." Nothing much at all. Sometimes people would laugh. Sometimes they would roll their eyes. "A wish on a rag won't bring you love, dearie," they would say. But usually people gave Maeve a kind smile, a squeeze on the arm, a knowing nod. And then they too would ask if they could add a wish of their own. Another year passed. As May neared, I found myself hosting more scraps of fabric than budding leaves. Squibbles tried to steal a few fabric strips to line his dray, the nest made of leaves and twigs high in one of my forked branches. I explained he'd have to stick with moss and pine needles until the 1st of May. Wishes, according to Maeve, could not be touched until after May Day. Then the ones that weren't carried off in the wind or dragged to the ground by the rain could be removed by people or by enterprising squirrels. I suspect she made up that rule for my benefit so I could grow unfettered without the weight of wet rags dragging me down. Just before dawn on the 1st of May, a young woman approached. She had dark wavy hair and wore a tattered gray coat. In her arms was a wrapped bundle. Psst, Squibbles whispered to me. Here comes another wish, Red. But Squibbles was wrong. There was no wish. Swiftly, but with great care, the girl placed her bundle in my hollow. A thank you for Maeve, I realized. A loaf of bread, perhaps. The girl had probably been one of her patients. She was gone as quickly as she'd come. Like a hummingbird, I thought. There, then not again. Like a gust of wind. Just a few minutes later, Maeve opened the door of her little brown house. She smiled at me and at the scraps waving in the early morning breeze. And then came the cry. Wail was more like it, coming from me. Not like the meek peep of a wren chick, not the shy squeak of a mouse pup. No, this was a cry of righteous indignation. This was a baby. The baby had a note attached to her blanket. Haltingly, Maeve tried to read it aloud. Italian, she murmured. Only later, when she consulted one of her patients, did she understand its meaning. Please give her the care I cannot. I wish for you both a life of love. The baby's hair was black. Maeve's was red. The baby's eyes were brown. Maeve's were blue. The baby was Italian. Maeve was Irish. They were made for each other. Maeve named the baby Amadora, which meant in Italian, the gift of love. I hope you enjoyed the chapters of Wishtree today. Come back tomorrow so we can hear more of Maeve's story and see what happens with Stephen and Samar.